Tycoon takes Mistress to dinner, but his pregnant wife shows up at the same spot. It was a quiet morning in Seoul, the kind that draped the city in golden light, casting a soft glow over the polished windows of high-rise apartments and gently rustling the cherry blossom trees that lined the sidewalks. In a luxurious penthouse perched above the city, everything looked perfect, from the pristine marble floors to the tranquil sound of a piano melody playing softly in the background. Eun-ji stood in front of a large window, one hand resting gently on her growing belly, the other wrapped around a warm mug of barley tea. She was 7 months pregnant, and her silhouette, framed against the sunlight, radiated both fragility and quiet strength. Her eyes followed the path of a tiny bird hopping on the ledge, and she smiled to herself. "I wonder if you'll be a boy or a girl," she whispered to the child growing inside her. "Will you have your father's laugh, or my stubborn heart?" Behind her, the sound of a door unlocking broke the stillness. Min-ho entered the room, still in a tailored suit from the night before. He looked tired, but his face wore the practiced calm of a man used to crafting appearances. He glanced at her briefly, then walked past to loosen his tie and pour himself a drink. "You didn't come home last night," Eun-ji said softly, not turning around. He paused. "I had meetings. It ran late. I didn't want to wake you." Her fingers tightened around the mug. She nodded, but her voice trembled, barely audible. "You could have called." There was a silence, long, heavy. Then he replied, "I was busy. That was all. Busy." Eun-ji turned around slowly, her eyes meeting his. There was so much she wanted to ask. "Where were you really? Why do you feel so far away now? Do you still love me?" But instead, she smiled faintly, as if afraid of the answers she might receive. "I was thinking we could go for a walk today, maybe to the park near the Han River? It's been a while since we did something together." Min-ho finished his drink in one swift gulp, setting the glass down with a clink. "I have work." She felt it again, that familiar pang, the space between them growing wider, like a crack in ice slowly spreading with every unspoken word. He was here, standing in front of her, but it felt like he was already gone. After he disappeared into the study, Eun-ji sat down on the couch, gently rubbing her belly. Her fingers trembled slightly as she traced circles over the fabric of her maternity dress. She wasn't naive. She noticed the way he avoided her touch lately, how his late nights became routine, the sudden need for privacy on his phone, the cologne that wasn't hers lingering faintly on his jacket. Still, she wanted to believe. She needed to believe that what they had wasn't just fading into memory. Their love story hadn't started with luxury or wealth. No, it began in a tiny university cafe, where she spilled coffee on his shirt and he laughed instead of getting angry, where they spent nights dreaming about building a life together, starting from nothing. She believed in him, sacrificed her career to support his rise, held his hand through every failed business pitch until he finally made it, the golden tycoon of Seoul. Now, they had the penthouse, the cars, the media attention, but something was missing, something real. Later that night, she waited up for him again. The dinner she made sat cold on the table. Her phone screen lit up again and again with no messages. She stared at the clock. 10:24 p.m., 10:46 p.m., 11:13 p.m. Finally, the elevator chimed. She rose quickly, smoothing her dress, practicing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. But as soon as he stepped in, she could smell the perfume. Not hers, not theirs. Something unfamiliar, expensive, and bold. "I waited for you," she said. Min-ho sighed, removing his shoes slowly. "You shouldn't have." He walked past her again. "Min-ho, are you seeing someone else?" The words left her lips before she could stop them. It was like ripping a bandage off a wound she didn't even want to admit was there. He froze, hands still on the banister. A long pause stretched between them. "I don't want to talk about this right now." That wasn't a no. It wasn't a yes either. Just another wall. Eun-ji stood there, her heart shattering quietly in her chest. She held her belly protectively, as if the child inside her could feel her sorrow. She wanted to scream, to cry, to beg him to come back to her, to the version of themselves that loved without hesitation. But instead, she whispered, "I still love you." Minho didn't answer. He just walked away. Later that night, Eunji curled up in bed alone. The city lights flickered outside the window, but inside her heart, there was only darkness. She placed her hands on her belly and closed her eyes, trying to breathe through the silent sobs that rocked her. "I'll be strong for you," she whispered to the life growing inside her. "Even if I'm alone, I'll protect you." Outside, it began to rain softly, a quiet drizzle, like the sky was weeping for her, for the woman who gave everything and was slowly being forgotten in return. Minho left without a word. Again, no kiss, no glance, not even a goodbye. Just the familiar click of the front door, the sound of footsteps fading down the hallway, and the silence that followed. The kind that felt too heavy to breathe in. Her sister called. Eunji picked up, trying to sound cheerful. "Yuni, are you okay?" "I'm fine," she lied. There was a pause. "You don't sound fine." "I'm just tired. Pregnancy things." Her sister didn't push, but Eunji could feel the worry behind the silence. And for a second, she wanted to tell someone, to say it out loud. "I think my husband doesn't love me anymore. I think he's seeing someone else. I think I'm falling apart quietly and no one even notices." But she didn't, because once the words were out, they couldn't be taken back. And maybe a part of her still hoped she was wrong. That evening, Minho came home earlier than usual. He looked distracted. His phone vibrated in his pocket more than once, but he didn't take it out in front of her. "Do you want dinner?" Eunji asked gently. He shook his head. "I already ate." "Did you have lunch with clients again?" she ventured, her voice calm, but her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the counter. He didn't look at her. "Something like that." She nodded slowly. "You know, I miss us. I miss talking to you, laughing with you." He finally met her eyes then, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of something. Regret? Guilt? Pain? But it vanished as quickly as it came. "You're just emotional. It's the hormones." Eunji. The words sliced through her. Not because they were loud, but because they were dismissive. Cold. She said nothing. Later, as he showered, she stood in their bedroom holding his jacket, pressing it to her nose. And there it was again. That scent. Floral. Sweet. Not hers. She sank onto the edge of the bed, her stomach cramping faintly, a dull ache rising from deep inside her. Not just physical, but the ache of being erased. Minho's phone vibrated again, forgotten on the nightstand. She didn't mean to look. She really didn't, but her hand moved on its own. The screen lit up. "Suyun, I can't wait for tonight. I made reservations at the same place we loved last week." Eunji blinked. Same place? Last week? Loved? Her throat closed. She placed the phone back exactly where it had been and walked to the bathroom. Through the steam-covered glass, she could see his silhouette. His back turned, unaware of the truth unraveling in the next room. Her hands trembled as she held the sink, trying to steady herself. Later that night, she sat in the nursery. Unfinished, half-painted walls, a crib still in pieces. She ran her hands over a folded onesie, imagining what it would be like to hold her child. The innocence, the new beginning. She cried, not loud, just the kind of crying that escapes when you've been strong for too long. The kind that comes out like a whisper. Meanwhile, across the city, in a rooftop restaurant with golden chandeliers and glass walls reflecting the skyline, Minho was laughing. Suyun leaned closer, her smile playful. "You've been distracted tonight. Work's just been heavy." She pouted. "You're not thinking about your wife, are you?" He didn't answer. She tilted her head, sipping her wine. "You're lucky, you know. Most men would kill for what you have." He smirked. "Which part? The money, the power, and now me." Minho looked away for a moment, eyes lingering on the city lights below. Something twisted inside him. He wasn't sure what it was. Maybe guilt, maybe not. "I'm not trying to be your wife," she said suddenly, her voice softer. "I don't want to steal your life. I just want to be the part of it that you choose." not the one you feel trapped in. He looked at her, and for a moment he wanted to believe that was true, that this wasn't messy, that he hadn't already crossed too many lines. Back at home, Eunji stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection. Was she still beautiful? Her eyes were swollen, her skin pale, her belly large and heavy, her once shiny hair tied back in a hurried bun. She touched her face. The woman in the mirror looked tired, forgotten, but beneath all that, she still saw herself. "I'm still here," she whispered. The next morning, she pretended not to know. She smiled when he left, kissed his cheek like always, let him believe she was none the wiser. But inside she was planning. Not revenge. Not yet. Just the beginning of the end. She went into the nursery that day and began painting the walls herself. Every stroke felt like reclaiming something. Her strength. Her voice. She played music. Loud. Let herself cry and laugh and feel again. Her baby kicked. She pressed her hand over the spot, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled from her soul. "We're going to be okay," she said. Far away in his office, Minho checked his phone. No messages from Eunji, just another one from Soo-yeon. "Dinner tonight? I want to show you off." And he replied, "Sure, somewhere nice." He had no idea that the place they were about to go to wasn't going to offer him a meal. A message from her friend, "Hey, you need fresh air. Let me take you to lunch. Just us. No talking about him." Eunji stared at the message, her lips pressed together in a hesitant line. After a long pause, she typed back, "Okay." She didn't know why she said yes. Maybe because the silence of the house was starting to feel like a second skin. Maybe because pretending everything was fine was exhausting. Maybe because some part of her, small and still bruised, wanted to be seen again, even if just by a friend. She didn't wear anything fancy. A simple cream dress that fit comfortably over her bump, her hair down, her makeup light. But she took a little longer getting ready than usual. She looked at herself in the mirror before leaving, forcing herself to hold her gaze. "You are not invisible." When they arrived at the restaurant, it was packed. The kind of place she and Minho used to go before everything changed, when dates were spontaneous and kisses were real. Her fingers tightened slightly on her bag as they entered. The hostess greeted them. "Do you have a reservation?" "Kim Hara," her friend answered brightly. They were guided through the velvet-draped entrance and seated by a wide window overlooking the city. The atmosphere was warm, full of soft piano music and the gentle clinking of silverware. For the first time in a while, Eunji let herself breathe. "I'm glad you came," Hara said, placing a hand on hers. "You don't have to be strong all the time, you know?" Eunji nodded, blinking fast. "I don't even know how to be weak anymore." Hara smiled gently. "Then let's just be tired together. For one meal." But then something shifted. From the corner of her eye, Eunji caught a flash of movement. A man's figure, tall, familiar. She turned her head slowly and froze. There, not 10 meters away, walking hand in hand with a woman in a red silk dress, was Minho. Her breath hitched. He didn't see her. He was laughing, his face relaxed. A smile she hadn't seen in months curved his lips. The woman beside him leaned into him, whispering something in his ear. He leaned back, amused, his hand grazing her waist. Time slowed. Hara noticed her frozen expression. "Eunji? What's wrong?" Eunji didn't answer. Her gaze was locked. The hostess was walking them to a table, the same section, just across the aisle. And then he saw her. Minho's eyes met hers across the room. It was like a blade slicing through the haze of lies he'd built. His smile faltered. His steps slowed. Soo-yeon looked up at him, confused. "What is it?" she asked. But he couldn't look away. Eunji didn't move, didn't cry, didn't speak. She simply looked at him. Her gaze was unreadable. Not cold, not angry, just still. And that stillness burned more than any accusation ever could. Minho reached up as if to explain, but no words came. Soo-yeon followed his gaze and turned. Her eyes landed on Eunji. Recognition flashed. She'd seen her before. A photo on his desk. A woman with eyes like the sky before rain. Soo-yeon stiffened. Is that? Min-ho didn't answer. Across the table, Hae-ra reached out, whispering, "We can go. Eun-ji, say the word." But Eun-ji shook her head slowly. She stood up. Her hands moved to her belly instinctively, her back straightening with quiet dignity. She walked toward them. Not fast, not hesitant, but with the grace of a woman who carried not just life, but truth. Min-ho looked like he was shrinking beneath the weight of her silence. When she reached their table, the entire restaurant had gone quiet. Conversations faded. Forks hovered mid-air. All eyes were on them. She looked at Soo-yeon first. "You're very beautiful," she said softly. Soo-yeon flinched. "I didn't," he told me. "I'm not here for you," Eun-ji interrupted gently. Then she turned to Min-ho. "I gave you everything," she whispered. "Every part of me. My youth, my faith, my heart. I gave it all. And you gave it to her." He tried to reach for her hand. "Eun-ji, please." She stepped back. "Do you know what hurts the most?" she said, her voice trembling now. "It's not that you cheated. It's that I waited. I waited for you to come home. I made dinner. I asked how your day was. I prayed that maybe, just maybe, you were just tired." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "You weren't tired. You were full." Min-ho's mouth parted, but he was silent. Everyone in the restaurant could hear their hearts breaking. Eun-ji placed her hand gently over her belly. "I'm not weak because I stayed. I stayed because I believed. But I won't stay anymore." She turned to leave, but paused, then looked back at him with eyes that no longer begged to be loved. "I hope she's worth losing a family for." And with that, she walked away. The room remained still, like the moment after a thunderclap. Min-ho didn't follow. Couldn't. His hands trembled, the weight of shame pressing down so hard he couldn't breathe. Soo-yeon said nothing. She looked down at her plate, suddenly nauseated by the scent of wine and perfume. Outside, Eun-ji stepped into the sunlight. Hae-ra followed quickly, tears in her eyes. "You were incredible," she whispered. But Eun-ji didn't feel incredible. She felt hollow, but she also felt something else. Relief. Not because it was over. She hadn't cried since that night. Not once. Something inside her had locked up, not out of strength but necessity. The tears would come later, maybe when she was alone and the baby was asleep. Maybe in the shower. Maybe never. For now, there were things to do, papers to file, appointments to make, a life to build, brick by fragile brick. The smell of garlic and sesame oil drifted through the apartment as her sister, Mi-suk, cooked quietly in the kitchen. The radio played low in the background, filling the air with gentle music. Eun-ji sat at the table, her hand resting protectively over her belly, a cup of warm water untouched in front of her. Mi-suk turned, wiping her hands on a towel. "He hasn't called?" Eun-ji shook her head. "Not once." "He won't," she said softly. There was a pause. Mi-suk's voice was gentle. "And if he does?" Eun-ji looked down at her stomach. "I'll listen, but I won't forget." Silence stretched between them. Then Mi-suk pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. "You don't have to be brave every moment, Eun-ji. Not with me." "I know," she whispered, but bravery wasn't something she put on. It was just survival now. Somewhere else in the city, behind tinted windows and polished boardroom tables, Min-ho sat in his office. His tie was loosened, his eyes dark with exhaustion. He hadn't been home either. Not to the penthouse, not to Soo-yeon's apartment. Just nowhere. He lived in hotels now. Quiet ones, expensive ones, places that didn't ask questions. A photo frame sat face down on his desk. He reached for it now, flipping it over. It was from their second anniversary. He was holding her close, kissing her temple. Her laugh caught in the middle of a breath. Eyes squinted from too much joy. She was glowing in that picture, not because of makeup or jewelry, but because she had believed in him. Completely. He ran his hand through his hair and leaned back in his chair. Suyun hadn't called either. Not since that night at the restaurant. Not after the way Eunji had stood in front of them like a quiet storm, graceful and devastating. She had been so still. Minho could still feel her gaze. It didn't scream, it didn't accuse, but it echoed, and it haunted him. At that moment his phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. "Sir, you missed the board meeting. Again." He didn't respond. He couldn't bring himself to care. What was the point of sitting in meetings when the one thing he had built his entire life around, his name, felt like it meant nothing anymore? That night, Eunji lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. Her sister had offered her the master bedroom, but she refused. She didn't need comfort. She needed simplicity. She needed to remember what mattered. She rolled onto her side, wincing slightly. The baby kicked. She smiled faintly, brushing her fingers along the curve of her belly. "Do you know," she whispered, "I used to imagine your father holding you first?" Another soft movement. "But I think now it'll be me." The tears finally came. Quiet, warm, streaking down her cheeks like a soft surrender. She let them fall. The next morning, she dressed slowly and checked her planner. A prenatal checkup at 11 o'clock. Her sister had offered to take her, but she said she'd be fine. When she arrived at the hospital, the nurse recognized her. "Mrs. Han," she said gently. "Are you alone today?" Eunji smiled politely. "Yes. Do you want us to note anyone as your emergency contact?" There was a long pause. She finally said, "Just my sister, not him." The nurse nodded, not asking more. During the ultrasound, she saw her baby's face clearly for the first time. The technician smiled. "Look, the nose, just like yours," she said. Eunji's chest tightened. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she smiled. "Hello, little one," she whispered. When she stepped outside the hospital, the sky had turned overcast. Clouds hung low, threatening rain. She wrapped her coat tighter and walked slowly toward the bus stop. She didn't see the black car parked across the street. Inside, Minho sat frozen, gripping the steering wheel. He had been there the whole time. He didn't know why he came. He wasn't brave enough to face her. Not yet, maybe not ever. But he needed to see her, to prove to himself that she was real, that the life he destroyed had a face and a heartbeat. He watched as she stepped carefully off the curb, her hand holding her belly, her steps slow, thoughtful. She looked different now. Not fragile, not broken. She looked like a woman becoming something new. He watched her until she disappeared into the crowd. And he didn't follow, because he didn't know how to be the man she needed anymore. That night, he sat in his hotel room, staring at the ceiling, remembering the sound of her voice when she used to say his name like it meant something. He closed his eyes. Each movement reminded her that time was passing, that soon life would change again. Misuk walked into the room holding a steaming bowl of porridge. "You didn't eat lunch," she said softly. "I wasn't hungry. You need to eat. For both of you." Eunji nodded, reaching for the bowl without protest. She knew her sister worried, though she rarely said it out loud. Her quiet kindness was louder than any lecture. They sat in silence, the only sound the soft pattering of rain against the window pane. Misuk finally spoke. "He called today." Eunji looked up slowly. "I didn't answer," her sister continued. "I thought you should know." Eunji's grip tightened slightly around the bowl. Her heart beat faster. The name alone made her chest ache. Not with longing, but confusion. She looked down. "Why now?" "I don't know. Maybe guilt. Maybe regret." Eunji's lips parted, as if to speak, but she said nothing. Her thoughts were a storm. What would she even say if she answered? "Are you sorry? Do you think one call makes up for everything? Or worse, do you want to come back?" That night, long after Misuk had gone to sleep, Eunji sat in the kitchen with the lights off, watching the streetlights shimmer through the raindrops on the window. Her phone was beside her, the screen dark. She hadn't looked at it since dinner, but it called to her. With trembling fingers, she reached for it, unlocking the screen. One missed call. Han Minho. No message. No text. Just the ghost of his name in her call history. She stared at it. And slowly, her thumb hovered over the number. But she didn't call back. She turned the phone over, screen down. Across the city, Minho sat in his car again, parked across from the same apartment. The windows were fogged from the rain. He had been there for nearly 2 hours. He didn't know what he was waiting for. He didn't even bring an umbrella. His hair was wet. His shirt clung to him. He looked up at the apartment window, unsure if she was behind it. His hand moved toward the car door, but he stopped. He was afraid, not of her anger, but of her eyes. Her eyes that used to look at him with warmth, with trust, with love, and now would only see a stranger. He leaned his head against the steering wheel and exhaled. Maybe she wouldn't open the door. Maybe she shouldn't. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the air was cool and damp. Unji had a checkup at the clinic again. Her sister offered to drive, but she wanted to go alone. She said it helped to walk. As she reached the hospital entrance, she noticed something strange. A man standing near the doors, holding a small umbrella, his suit damp around the shoulders. She froze. Minho. Their eyes met, and time stopped. He looked different, tired, pale, but his eyes, they were desperate. She blinked, as if unsure he was real. Unji, he said, voice breaking. She didn't respond. He stepped closer, slowly, carefully, like she was a wounded animal and he didn't want to scare her away. I heard you had an appointment today, he said. I wanted to be here, in case you needed anything. Her expression didn't change. You left me, she whispered. I know. You watched me walk away. I know. And now, you show up at the hospital like that erases it? No, he said, shaking his head. I don't expect forgiveness. I needed to see if you were okay. The wind picked up gently. She pulled her coat tighter, looking down. Why now? Minho's voice was low. Because I was a coward. Because I told myself I was choosing freedom, when really I was just running from everything I didn't want to face. I thought I wanted something different, but nothing feels right without you. She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with tears. I begged you with my silence, she said. Every time I set your dinner on the table. Every time I asked if you were tired. Every time I smiled and said, good night, when you walked past me. That was me begging. And you didn't even see me. His face broke. I see you now, he whispered. Her voice trembled. And now I don't know if I want to be seen anymore. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled envelope. This is a letter I wrote the night I left. I never sent it. I didn't know how. I still don't know if it means anything. But it's yours. He held it out. She didn't take it. Not right away. They stood like that for a long moment. Two people who once shared everything, now separated by a chasm carved by betrayal. Finally, she reached for it. Not because she wanted to forgive, but because part of healing meant confronting the words that were never said. I'm late, she said quietly. They're waiting for me upstairs. He nodded, stepping aside. She walked past him, but she paused at the door, and without turning around, she said, this isn't the place to talk about the past. I know, he answered, and just like that, she disappeared through the doors, the envelope gripped in her hand. Minho stood alone on the sidewalk, the wind tugging gently at his coat. Inside, Unji sat in the waiting room. She didn't open the letter. Not yet, but she held it close. Now the apartment was quiet. The world was asleep, and she was alone with the weight of 1,000 unspoken things. She held her breath and finally tore the flap open. The handwriting inside was unmistakably his, clean, careful, like how he used to write her notes on post-its when they were poor and young and believed forever meant something. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the paper. Unji, I know I have no right to speak, no right to be heard, but silence has been eating me alive. And if I don't say this even just once, I will drown in all the things I didn't tell you. You were always the light, even when I didn't deserve it, even when I mistook your patience for weakness. I think the truth is, I started drifting the moment I believed I no longer needed to earn your love. The moment I took for granted that you would always be there, smiling, waiting, forgiving. And then, I met someone who didn't know my flaws yet. Someone who saw the powerful version of me, not the broken one. I thought that was freedom. I thought maybe I deserved that kind of admiration again. But it wasn't real. None of it was real. You were the real thing, and I destroyed you. You will never know how sorry I am. But I needed you to hear it. Not from my mouth, but from the part of me that still remembers how to write love letters. I will never ask you to take me back. I wouldn't dare, but I will carry this shame for the rest of my life. Yours once, and never enough. Minho, her vision blurred. She folded the letter gently and pressed it to her chest. Tears fell. Not just for what was lost, but for the words she had begged to hear so many nights alone. And now, finally spoken, they felt like a wound too late to stitch. The next morning, Unji sat in the kitchen drinking barley tea while her sister got ready for work. The letter was in her pocket now, a part of her, even if she wasn't sure what to do with it yet. Misuk peered in from the hallway. You okay? Unji nodded. I read it. Misuk walked over and sat down. And, I don't hate him, she whispered. That's the worst part. Misuk reached for her hand and squeezed it. You don't have to decide anything now, she said. Healing isn't about answers. It's about breathing again. Unji exhaled slowly. Later that afternoon, while she was folding baby clothes in the living room, the intercom buzzed. She hesitated, then walked over and pressed the button. Yes, a voice crackled through the speaker. It's me, Minho. Her chest tightened. What do you want? I left something for you downstairs. I won't come up. Promise. It's not much. I just wanted to give it to you. She paused, unsure whether to answer, but curiosity got the better of her. 10 minutes later, she stepped out into the hallway, elevator key in hand, heart thudding. She wasn't dressed up, just a loose cardigan over a maternity dress, her hair tied back. She looked like a woman who had stopped waiting for anything to impress her. When she reached the front door of the building, there was no sign of Minho, only a small box left on the bench by the entrance. She picked it up and returned to the apartment. Inside the box was a photo album, old, worn, the one they had started in their first year of marriage. She hadn't seen it in a long time. She opened it. The first picture was of them standing in front of their first apartment. Tiny, cracked walls, a leaky ceiling, and a potted plant she had begged him to buy. They were smiling like fools. Each page brought memories flooding back. Her birthday picnic, his first client, the ultrasound photo from her very first pregnancy, the one they lost early on, and cried about together, holding each other all night. Near the back of the album was a new photo, one she had never seen before. It was a recent shot of her, pregnant, standing in the park, sunlight behind her. She hadn't noticed anyone taking it. And beneath it, a note scribbled in his handwriting. I saw you. I didn't say anything, but I saw you. Her breath caught. She slammed the album shut and leaned back against the couch, overwhelmed. That night, she sat on the balcony while the city lights flickered below. The album rested on her lap. She hadn't told Misuk yet. She didn't know if she would. Her phone buzzed beside her. A text from Minho. I don't know what you need right now, but if you ever want to talk, even just once, I'll be here. She stared at it, then slowly typed back. Not yet, but maybe someday. She spent her time preparing for the baby, washing tiny onesies, folding them into drawers with trembling hands, watching the sun rise through the window, whispering lullabies to a child who wasn't yet here, but already filled her with purpose. One morning, she stood in front of the mirror. Her belly had grown heavier, rounder, and her body ached in places she never expected. But she looked at herself, really looked, not with sadness, not with regret, with awe. I carried all of this through fire, she thought, and I'm still standing. She was stronger now, but life has a way of testing strength when you least expect it. It happened on a Wednesday, She was walking down the sidewalk outside the pharmacy, a bag of prenatal vitamins in her hand, when her body suddenly froze. A sharp pain seized her side, quick, violent. She gasped, nearly dropping the bag. Then came another. Her knees buckled. People rushed toward her. A woman grabbed her arm. "Are you okay? Are you?" "My sister," she whispered, trying to find her phone in her bag. "Call my sister." But the pain hit again, sharper this time. Everything blurred. The last thing she saw before her vision dimmed was the sky, so painfully blue. She woke in the hospital. White lights, the steady beeping of a monitor, the scent of antiseptic in the air, and then her sister's voice. "You're awake," Misuk whispered, brushing her hair back from her forehead. "You scared me to death. What happened?" "You collapsed. Someone called the ambulance. You had early contractions. They managed to stop them. The baby's okay, but they want to keep you here for a few days. To monitor you." Unji looked down at her belly. A nurse was adjusting the fetal monitor. The sound of her baby's heartbeat filled the room. Fast, strong. Tears welled in her eyes. "You're safe," she whispered to the child. "You're safe, little one." But the moment was broken by a knock. The door opened, and there he was, Minho, soaked from the rain, hair plastered to his forehead, breathless, like he had run the entire way from wherever he was. He froze when he saw her, then stepped in slowly, almost afraid to be real in front of her. "Is she okay?" he asked, his voice cracking. Misuk glared at him but said nothing. She looked at Unji, waiting for a cue. Unji nodded faintly. "It's okay. You can stay." Minho stepped closer, but carefully, like every inch forward cost him something. I heard from the hospital. Your emergency contact still has my name. I forgot to change it," she said softly. He winced. Silence fell. Then his voice again, raw, unguarded. "When I got the call, I thought..." He swallowed hard. "I thought I'd lost you, that I'd never get to see you again. And everything inside me just collapsed." Unji didn't speak. He looked at her, really looked. Pale skin, worn eyes, and still she looked radiant, sacred, unbreakable. "I know I shouldn't be here," he continued, "but I had to see you. I had to see that you were okay." She watched him closely. Then, softly, "Do you want to meet her?" Minho blinked. "Her? The baby?" He nodded slowly, and she motioned toward the monitor. He walked over, stood beside her, eyes fixed on the screen. The heartbeat echoed steadily through the room. His hand hovered, unsure if he had permission to touch. "She's strong," he whispered. "She had to be." He turned to her then. "I was going to be a father," he said, voice low. "And I didn't even know what that meant until I realized what it might feel like to lose both of you." Unji's eyes didn't soften. "Not yet. You walked away," she said. "Not just from me. From her." He nodded. "I'll never forgive myself for that." She looked at him. "I'm not asking you to." He opened his mouth to say more, but the nurse came in. "Visiting hours are almost over." Minho stepped back reluctantly. "I'll go." He looked at her one last time. "If there's ever anything you need, anything at all, please, just tell me. I'll be there." He turned and walked out. The door clicked softly behind him. Unji leaned back into the pillows, staring at the ceiling, the rhythmic beat of her daughter's heart filling the room. That night, sleep came in waves. And in one of those hazy moments between dreaming and waking, she remembered something. The look in Minho's eyes. It wasn't the same look he gave to the woman in red. It wasn't lust or guilt. It was grief and something else. Something almost like hope. But it was too soon to tell. Too soon to trust. Too soon to feel. The next morning, the doctor visited and smiled kindly. "She's stable, but we want to avoid any more stress. I'd suggest staying with family after you're discharged. Not alone." Unji nodded. When the doctor left, she stared out the window. The sky had cleared. The city below bustled with life, unaware of all the hearts breaking and healing in quiet rooms like this one. She should have felt relief. The danger had passed. Her baby was safe. She was safe. But her heart, it wasn't quiet. It trembled. Not from fear, but from something else. Something she didn't want to name yet. The door opened softly. Misuk stepped in with a warm smile and a paper cup of barley tea. "I thought you'd like this." "Thank you," Unji said, voice quiet. Her sister sat beside her and studied her face. "You didn't sleep." "I couldn't." Misuk sighed, gently tucking a strand of hair behind Unji's ear. "He looked wrecked when he left last night, completely broken." "I know," she said. Then after a pause, "But so was I, for months, and no one noticed." Her sister nodded slowly. People always see what's obvious, not what's happening quietly in the dark. There was a long silence between them, only broken by the occasional beep of the monitor. "I think he means it," Misuk added carefully. "The apology, the regret." Unji turned her head. "That's not the question." "Then what is?" She looked down, eyes misting. "Does it change anything?" That was the part no one understood. Regret didn't rewind time. Love didn't erase betrayal. She didn't need him to be sorry. She needed him not to have done it. Misuk reached over, squeezing her hand. "You'll know when it's time to decide." Later that afternoon, the door knocked again. This time, Unji didn't say anything. She just looked up. And when it opened, it wasn't Minho. It was her, Suyun, the last person Unji ever expected to see in this room. She stood just inside the doorway, her hair pulled back into a tight ponytail, her face pale and unpainted. She looked smaller without the makeup, the heels, the confidence. "May I come in?" Her voice was soft, unsure. Misuk stood immediately, protective. "What do you want?" Suyun raised her hands. "Nothing, I swear. I'm not here to make things worse." Unji looked at her carefully, then nodded once. Misuk hesitated, then stepped out, lingering just outside the door. Suyun walked in slowly, her eyes taking in the room. The wires, the monitor, the woman lying in the bed, more powerful in her stillness than Suyun had ever been with all her glamour. "I didn't come to apologize," she said first, "because I know you'd see through it." Unji raised her brow faintly. "Then why are you here?" Suyun swallowed hard. "I came to say you deserved better, and I knew it the entire time." Silence. She continued, voice trembling. "Every time he looked at his phone while we were together, I knew he was thinking about you. Every time he got quiet or distracted or suddenly distant, I knew it had nothing to do with business. It was you. Always you. Even when he was trying to forget you." Unji looked away, her throat tightening. "Then why stay?" she whispered. Suyun smiled bitterly. "Because I thought I could win. I thought, maybe if I gave him something you couldn't anymore, he'd love me instead." Unji met her eyes then. "You didn't win." "I know." She took a shaky breath. "But I lost more than I expected. I thought I was strong, that love was something to be conquered. But I never felt like I was home. Not once. He never gave me the part of him you had." A beat passed. Then Suyun did something unexpected. She pulled a folded paper from her coat and placed it on the side table. "He wrote this, for you, but he tore it up. I found the pieces and put it back together. He never meant for anyone to see it. But I think maybe you should." Unji stared at the paper, unmoving. Suyun turned to leave. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said at the door. "But I hope someday you find peace, even if it's not with him, especially if it's not." Then she was gone. Unji stared at the paper for a long time before reaching for it. It was a simple page. No envelope, no signature, just Minho's handwriting, broken and uneven. "Sometimes I wake in the middle of the night and reach for you, and every time I find the space beside me empty, I remember, I did that. I was given the kind of love people beg for in prayers, and I walked away. I thought I wanted fire, passion, excitement. But now I miss the sound of your breath while you read. I miss the way you'd hum while folding laundry. I miss how home wasn't a place, but a heartbeat, yours. If I'm never forgiven, I will understand." But if by some miracle you can look at me one day and not see just the man who broke you, I will spend the rest of my life earning the right to stay in that gaze. I miss you, Unji. And I miss the life I destroyed. Her breath hitched. Her fingers clenched the paper so tightly it crinkled under her grip. She didn't cry. She just lay back, closed her eyes, and let the ache fill the space that used to be love. She didn't know what would come next. She didn't know if forgiveness was even possible. But she knew one thing: her story was no longer about him. It was about her. The monitor beside her beeped steadily. Nothing alarming. She waited. The pressure faded. She exhaled, trying to convince herself it was just her body adjusting. Nothing more. But 10 minutes later it came again. Stronger. She pressed the call button. The nurse arrived quickly, gentle hands checking the monitor. Her expression unreadable at first. Then came the soft frown. "We're going to call the doctor," the nurse said. "Just to be sure." Unji nodded silently, trying to control the fear that was curling up in her chest. Within minutes, 2 doctors were in the room, checking vitals, asking questions. "How far apart are the cramps?" "About every 10 minutes. The younger doctor, a woman with kind eyes, placed a hand on Unji's wrist. "We're going to monitor you closely now. Could be preterm labor. We'll do everything we can to stop it." Is the baby in danger?" Her voice cracked. "We'll do our best. Right now, both of you are stable." But the word stable sounded too fragile, like porcelain balanced on a narrow ledge. The contractions became more intense as the hours passed. Each one pulled something out of her: her breath, her strength, her hope. She gripped the sides of the bed, her face pale with pain. Misuk returned in a panic, tears already in her eyes. "I came as fast as I could. Are you okay? What did they say?" "They're trying to stop it," Unji whispered, her voice strained. "But I don't know if they can." Her sister held her hand tightly. "You're not alone. I'm here. I'm right here." By dawn, she was fully in labor. The doctors had done everything they could. But her body had made its choice. The room became a flurry of movement. Nurses, medical carts, soft commands. They were preparing for an early birth. Unji felt detached from her body, like she was watching it all from a distance, floating somewhere just above the fear. But then, the pain pulled her back down, anchored her. She cried out, and Misuk gripped her hand even tighter. "You can do this," her sister whispered. "You're the strongest person I've ever known." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I'm scared." "I know," Misuk said. "But you're not doing this alone." Outside, in the waiting room, Minho sat on one of the hard plastic chairs, elbows on his knees, his face buried in his hands. He wasn't supposed to be there. No one had called him. But after Suyun left that letter behind, he knew. He had to be there. He looked up every time a nurse walked by, every time footsteps echoed in the hallway, hoping, dreading, that someone would tell him something. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. He stood and approached the front desk. "My name is Han Minho. My wife is in labor, Unji. Please, can I see her? Is she okay?" The nurse hesitated. "Sir, she's asked for limited visitors." "I know," he said, voice tight, "but I'm not here to interrupt. I just want to know if she's okay. I'll wait outside the door if I have to. I need to be near her." She studied him for a moment. Something in his voice, something real, made her pause. "I'll let the team know." Back in the delivery room, everything hurt. Time lost meaning. Pain came in waves, crashing against her bones, stealing her breath, her voice, her strength. Misuk wiped sweat from her forehead and whispered words that barely registered. "You're doing it. You're almost there. Just a little more." "I can't," Unji gasped. "I can't." "Yes, you can," her sister said, firm and steady. "You're not the same woman you were. You've rebuilt yourself. You've carried this child through betrayal, heartbreak, and fear. And now, you're about to bring her into the world." Unji's vision blurred with tears. One more push, then silence, and then a cry. A high, beautiful, trembling cry. The sound broke something open inside her. A dam of pain, love, and release. She collapsed against the bed, sobbing, not from sorrow, but from everything that had led her here. The nurse placed the tiny, squirming bundle on her chest. "She's perfect," someone whispered. Unji looked down at her daughter, and felt the world shift beneath her. Tiny hands, soft skin, a heartbeat against her own. "Hello, my love," she whispered through tears. "We made it." Outside the room, the nurse stepped into the hallway, where Minho sat motionless. "She gave birth," the nurse said softly. "It was early, but the baby's strong. She's healthy." Minho stood slowly, his body stiff from sitting so long. "Can I, just for a moment? I won't go in. I just want to see them." The nurse nodded, then led him down the hallway. They stopped just outside the room. The door was open a crack. He peeked through, and saw her, Unji, holding their daughter against her chest, rocking her gently, whispering something he couldn't hear. Her hair was matted to her forehead. Her eyes were tired, but she looked more radiant than she ever had. Alive, reborn. He didn't step in. He simply watched, and in that moment he understood. There were some kinds of love that you didn't deserve to return to, but you could still spend a lifetime honoring them from afar. Unji lay awake, the baby nestled in her arms, sleeping with her tiny mouth open, her breath soft as feathers. She couldn't stop looking at her. Every blink, every sigh, every flinch of her fingers. It all felt like a miracle she had almost lost. The birth had taken something from her, but it had also given her something back. Not just her daughter, but herself. Misuk was asleep on the couch across the room, her jacket folded under her head. She had stayed awake through the night, held her hand through every scream, never left her side. Unji whispered across the room, "Uni?" Misuk stirred, rubbed her eyes. She's here." "I know," Misuk said with a tired smile. "And she's beautiful." There was a pause. Unji looked down again. "I didn't think I could do it." "You didn't just do it," her sister said, sitting up. "You survived it. You fought for her. You protected her." Unji's lips trembled. She looked so small, her daughter, so delicate, but strong, already strong. She doesn't even know how much pain brought her here. Misuk stood and crossed the room, kneeling beside the bed. "She doesn't need to, because you carried it for her." A tear slid down Unji's cheek. "And now I carry her," she whispered. There was a soft knock at the door. Misuk stood and opened it just a crack. A nurse peeked in. "There's someone asking to see the baby. He says he's the father." Unji's breath caught. Misuk looked back at her. "Do you want me to send him away?" Unji looked down at her daughter again. Then after a long moment, nodded. "Let him come in." Misuk hesitated, then stepped outside with the nurse. The door opened a moment later. Minho entered quietly, almost hesitantly. He wasn't in a suit this time. He wore a simple sweater and jeans, and his eyes were red, tired. Not from lack of sleep, but from a heaviness he'd been carrying for months. His gaze locked on the baby, and he stopped breathing. Unji watched him carefully. He stepped closer, not speaking, not moving too fast, just staring, as if he was afraid the moment would disappear if he blinked. "She looks like you," he finally whispered. "She has your ears," Unji replied quietly. His lips curved faintly, just for a second before the sorrow returned. "She's beautiful," he said, his voice breaking. Unji didn't answer. He looked at her then. Really looked. "Are you okay?" "I will be," she said. Minho's throat tightened. "I wasn't sure you'd let me in." "I wasn't sure either." He swallowed. "I don't expect anything. I wanted to see her. Once." Unji studied his face. The regret there. The tenderness. The shame. "You ran," she said. "You abandoned us." "I know. I needed you. I know. I begged you in silence every night." "I know," he repeated, eyes shimmering. She looked back down at the baby. "I didn't." call you when it happened because I didn't know if you deserved to be here. I didn't. But still, you came. I couldn't stay away. Silence settled between them again. Minho stepped a little closer. Can I? He gestured toward the baby. Eunji paused. Then, slowly, she shifted the child into his arms. He took her like she was made of glass. His hands shook. Tears pooled in his eyes the moment he felt her weight against his chest. Hi, he whispered to the newborn. Hi, sweetheart. It's me. The baby stirred slightly, one hand flinching, her head leaning into the curve of his palm. Minho wept silently, his tears falling onto her blanket. I'm so sorry, he whispered to her over and over again. I'm so sorry. Eunji watched them, her heart twisted in a way she hadn't expected, because for the first time, she saw him not as the man who broke her, but as the man who had to live with what he broke. And that was its own kind of punishment. When he finally looked up again, his voice was barely audible. I don't know what happens next, he said, but whatever it is, I'll accept it. If you tell me to leave, I'll go. If you tell me to stay away, I will. I just wanted to see her, and to thank you for not giving up on her, even when I did. Eunji's hands trembled in her lap. She didn't know what she felt. Not yet. It was too early, too raw. But she also didn't tell him to leave. That, in itself, meant something. You should go now, she said softly. He nodded, placing the baby gently back into her arms. She shifted, sighed, but didn't cry. Minho backed toward the door, stopping once before opening it. I'll wait, he said. Even if it takes years. I'll wait. Then he left, and this time he didn't slam the door behind him. Eunji sat in the quiet again, just her and her daughter. The girl's eyes fluttered open for a second, dark, curious. Back at Misuk's apartment, life began again. Not fast or loud, but one heartbeat at a time. Diaper changes, feedings, crying at 3 in the morning. But in between the exhaustion, there were moments of grace. The warmth of tiny fingers closing around hers. The way the baby nestled into her chest as if she belonged nowhere else in the world. Still, there was something lingering in Eunji's chest that she didn't know how to name. A hollowness. Not grief, not anger, something quieter. One afternoon, as she rocked the baby in the chair by the window, Misuk walked in holding her phone. She hesitated in the doorway. There's something I need to tell you, she said. Eunji looked up slowly. It's about Minho. Her heart tightened instantly. What about him? He came to the building yesterday. I didn't let him in. Eunji blinked. He didn't tell me. I think maybe he wasn't going to. He left something for you. Misuk walked over and placed a small envelope on the coffee table. I didn't read it, but I think you should. Eunji stared at it. Her body didn't move. Only her mind raced. I'm scared of what it says, she whispered. You've already survived everything he didn't say, Misuk replied gently. This is just paper. You're stronger now. After her sister left the room, Eunji sat in silence, the baby asleep in her arms, her breath slow and steady. The envelope sat untouched on the table. And then, with trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside was a folded letter and a photo. She pulled the photo out first. It was a picture of Minho, not taken by anyone else, but a selfie. He looked like he hadn't slept. His eyes were swollen, his mouth slightly parted, like he had been about to say something but didn't. Behind him was a view of their old apartment building, the first one they lived in as newlyweds. And taped to the back of the photo was a tiny scrap of paper. A single sentence written in pen. I went back to the beginning because I couldn't find the end. Eunji blinked fast, the ache rising. She unfolded the letter next. Eunji, I don't expect you to read this. And if you do, I don't expect it to change anything. I just wanted you to know. I've started seeing a therapist. Not because I think it'll win you back, but because I finally realized something I didn't want to admit. I broke long before I broke us. I used your love like a shield, like it was something that would protect me from my own emptiness. I leaned on you, depended on your strength, And when I felt like I didn't deserve it anymore, I ran. I didn't know how to be enough. So I became someone else. But I never stopped missing home. Not the walls. Not the bed. You. I went back to the apartment. The old one. Do you remember the night we stayed up until 3 a.m. painting the bedroom blue? Even though we didn't have enough paint? You said, "It's okay if it's imperfect. It just needs to feel like us." I keep hearing those words. I don't know if we can ever be us again. I don't even know if I deserve to know this version of you, the woman who walked through fire and came out glowing. But I'm trying now. For the first time in my life, I'm trying not just to look like a good man, but become one. For her. For you. Even if it's from a distance. I hope one day, she'll know that her father loved her enough to want to be better. Even if he started too late. Yours, not to own, but to honor, Min-ho. By the time she finished reading, tears stained the paper. She didn't cry because she wanted him back. She cried because she could finally feel the shift. The weight of all the words that had been left unspoken, now laid bare in ink and vulnerability. Later that evening, she sat at the window again, her daughter sleeping against her, the night settling over the city like a soft blanket. Misuk came in with tea, but stopped when she saw her. "Did you read it?" Unji nodded. "And I believe him," she said. "For the first time, I believe he's trying." "Do you think you'll forgive him?" Unji was quiet for a long time. "I think forgiveness isn't a door you open for someone else. It's the moment you stop holding the weight they left behind." Misuk sat beside her. "And have you?" She looked down at her daughter, who stirred gently, her tiny fingers curling around the fabric of Unji's shirt. "I think I'm starting to," she whispered. She was sitting in the park one morning, her daughter bundled in a soft yellow blanket against her chest, the winter sun warm on her face. A soft breeze rustled the trees, carrying the faint sound of children laughing nearby. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting herself simply exist. No fear, no judgment, just presence. "Is this seat taken?" a familiar voice asked. Her eyes opened. Min-ho stood a few feet away, his hands in his coat pockets. His voice was careful, uncertain. Not the confident businessman she had once known. Just a man unsure if he still had the right to ask. She hesitated, then gestured to the bench. "No," she said softly. "It's not." He sat beside her, leaving space between them. "She's getting so big," he said, his eyes on the sleeping bundle. "She is." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the branches sway above them. "I didn't come to ask for anything," he said. "I know. I've been volunteering at a family center, working with men who lost custody of their kids. A lot of them never got to say sorry or change." She glanced at him. "I didn't expect you to tell me that. I didn't come here for forgiveness. I came because I wanted to show you who I'm becoming, not who I was." She looked down at her daughter's face. "Why now?" He swallowed. "Because I heard she started smiling, and I realized I didn't want to miss knowing what that looked like." Her chest tightened. "She smiled for the first time last week. In the middle of the night. I was singing to her, and she just looked up at me and grinned." Min-ho's eyes glistened. "What were you singing?" he asked. She paused. Then, softly, she hummed a lullaby. The same one she used to sing back in their old apartment when they thought they had the whole world ahead of them. Min-ho's breath caught. "I remember that," he whispered. "You used to hum it when you folded laundry." She nodded. "That was before the silence." He bowed his head. "I'm sorry I stopped listening. I'm sorry I stopped speaking," she replied. He looked at her. "I miss her. Not just the baby. You." Unji turned to him, her voice calm. "The woman you miss doesn't exist anymore, Min-ho." He froze. "She changed," she said. "She broke. She bled. She screamed into pillows and rocked a crying child alone at 3 a.m. She begged the sky for peace. And somehow she rose anyway. I'm not who I was when you left me. I don't think I ever will be again." His throat tightened. "Then maybe I could get to know her. Who you are now." A long silence fell between them. Unji looked forward again. watching a young couple push a stroller by the lake, laughing about something they'd probably forget by sunset. "I don't know what I feel, Min-ho," she said. "Sometimes I miss you. Sometimes I want to scream at you. Sometimes I see you with her and think, maybe it could have been beautiful." He blinked, pain flashing through his eyes. "But then I look at her," she added, nodding toward their daughter, "and I remember, everything I need is already here." He nodded slowly. "Would it be okay if I sat with you? Just like this? Sometimes?" She didn't answer at first. Then softly, she said, "We'll see." He smiled faintly, not pushing further. The baby stirred, letting out a soft whimper. Unji gently rocked her, whispering soothing words. Minho watched, quiet, his hands resting on his knees. "I named her Hae-won," she said suddenly, eyes still on her daughter. He looked at her in surprise. "Hae-won. It means graceful garden," she said. "A place where things bloom again, even after storms." He looked down, his voice catching. "It's perfect." They sat there a little longer. The wind picked up slightly, scattering a few leaves across the path. Unji stood slowly, adjusting the baby against her chest. "I should go," she said. Minho rose, stepping aside. "Of course." As she began to walk, he spoke again, quietly. "Thank you for not walking away when you saw me today." She looked back, her expression unreadable. "I'm not the one who disappeared, Minho. You're just finding your way back to the world." Then she walked away, her daughter warm against her, her steps steady. And Minho stood there, watching her leave again. But this time he didn't feel abandoned. He felt reminded that healing isn't a door someone opens for you. Unji sat on the edge of her bed, her hands gripping the phone in her lap. Her doctor had called earlier in the week with some results from a routine postpartum exam. Nothing alarming, she had said, but they wanted to do a few more tests just to be sure. Something about blood pressure and oxygen levels not bouncing back the way they should. She hadn't told anyone yet, not even Misuk, not because she was afraid of the results, but because she was afraid of what it would mean to worry again, to feel helpless again. She closed her eyes and inhaled slowly, pressing her hand to her chest as if that might calm the sudden ache spreading inside. The ache didn't go away. She stood and walked toward the crib, gazing down at her daughter. Hae-won stirred slightly, her tiny hands curled against her cheeks. "I'm okay," Unji whispered. "I promise." But even the words sounded like a lie. Later that evening, as she prepared dinner, her hands moved slower than usual. She felt off, lightheaded. Her vision blurred for a moment, then cleared. She blinked it away and kept chopping vegetables. Misuk came home and took one look at her. "You're pale," she said, setting her bag down. "You don't look well." "I'm just tired," Unji replied too quickly. "That's not just tired. You're swaying." "I'm fine." "No, you're not." Misuk crossed the kitchen and gently took the knife from her hand. "Sit down." "I have to." "Finish." "Sit." Unji sat at the table, her hand trembling slightly as she reached for her glass of water. Misuk crouched beside her. "What's going on?" Unji's lips parted, but no words came out at first. Then, finally, she whispered, "The doctor called. A few days ago. They want to run more tests." Misuk's face tensed. "What kind of tests?" "They're not sure. My blood pressure's low. They said it might be stress. Or anemia. Or something else." Her voice broke. "And you didn't tell me?" "I didn't want to worry anyone." Misuk stood, pacing. "You just had a baby. You collapsed once already. You think not telling us is protecting anyone." Unji's eyes welled. "I'm scared." Her sister stopped. The vulnerability in her voice cracked something open in both of them. Misuk walked over and wrapped her arms around her, holding her close. "You don't have to do any of this alone. I just..." Unji trembled in her arms. "What if I get sick again? What if I'm not here for her?" "You will be," Misuk said fiercely. "We'll fight. Whatever it is, we'll fight it. Together." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Unji stood by the window with Hae-won in her arms, the lights of the city glittering beneath them. She rocked her gently and spoke softly, like a prayer. Your mama is strong, but she's tired and scared, and sometimes she still hears the echoes of being left. The baby stirred, her face peaceful. But you are the reason I keep getting up, the reason I try again, and if I have to go through more pain, I'll do it. As long as I get to see you grow, hear you laugh, hold your hand on your first day of school. Her voice cracked. I want to be there for all of it. Please, let me be there. The next morning, she returned to the hospital. Alone. She didn't tell Minho. Didn't want the weight of his guilt clouding her resolve. The nurse led her to a room where machines beeped quietly and the air felt too sterile, too full of possibilities. They took blood, ran scans, asked questions she didn't have answers to. When it was done, the doctor sat across from her, holding a chart in his hands. We'll need a few days for the full results, he said. But preliminary signs point to exhaustion and vitamin deficiencies. Nothing life-threatening. Relief filled her eyes instantly, but he continued. That said, your body's been under immense stress. You need to rest. You need support. She nodded slowly. You're not invincible, Ms. Han, he added. Even mothers need care. When she left the hospital, the sun had broken through the clouds. She stood for a moment on the steps, letting the warmth touch her face. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Minho. Just thinking about you and Hae-won today. No pressure to reply. Just sending peace your way. She stared at it, then typed back. Thank you. I could use a little peace. She didn't send anything else. But later that evening, as she lay beside her daughter, she thought about what it meant to be fragile, and how that wasn't weakness. It was truth. She looked stronger already, more alert, brighter. So why do I feel like I'm falling apart again? A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. She turned toward the door, confused. Mi-suk had gone to the grocery store. She wasn't expecting anyone. She stood up slowly, carefully lifting Hae-won into her arms before padding to the door. She opened it just a crack. Minho stood there, hair damp from the light drizzle, holding a brown paper bag. I know I should have called, he said quickly. But I was in the neighborhood. I brought porridge. From that place you used to like. Her eyes narrowed. You remembered? His smile was soft. I remember everything I wish I hadn't taken for granted. A pause. I'm sorry if this is too much. I can leave it here and go. She opened the door a little wider. Come in. But not for long. He nodded, stepping in gently like a man afraid of stepping on broken glass. As he entered, he caught sight of Hae-won in her arms. His expression softened immediately. She's gotten so big. Unji moved to the kitchen, placing the porridge on the counter and nodding toward the living room. You can sit. He sat carefully, knees bouncing slightly, the weight of something unsaid radiating from his every movement. She looks healthier, he said after a moment. You both do. Unji glanced over her shoulder. We're trying. I can see that. She returned with a glass of water and sat across from him. The baby nestled quietly against her chest. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he cleared his throat, his voice quieter. I saw your message, the one about needing peace. I meant it, she said. I know. That's why I didn't push. But I also didn't want to disappear again. I've been learning how not to run, even when I feel helpless. She looked at him, eyes narrowed slightly. Why helpless? He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Because I still don't know what you need from me, or if I should even offer anything. Part of me thinks I should vanish and leave you in peace. But the other part, she interrupted him softly, wants to be here. He nodded, eyes wet. And not just for her, he said, glancing at the baby. But for you, because I still care. And because I know I failed you in a way that's not just about infidelity but abandonment. I left you in every way. The words hit her like a slow wave. Not because they hurt, but because they echoed. And now, she asked, now that everything's broken, I don't want to fix it out of guilt. he said. I want to learn how to honor what's left. Even if all you ever let me do is sit across from you like this. Quietly, she looked down at Hae-won, who had fallen asleep against her. Do you know what hurt most? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. It wasn't the lies, or the silence, or even seeing you with her. It was knowing that while I was bleeding emotionally and physically, while I was breaking alone, you were somewhere. Laughing. He swallowed, pain twisting across his face. I know. She looked up at him again, eyes sharp. No, you don't. Not really. Because I never screamed. I never hit you. I never begged. But inside, God, Minho, inside I was clawing at the walls. I died in pieces. Every night. Her voice cracked. And still, I loved you. He closed his eyes tightly. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I didn't say you had it. Silence. Only Hae-won's gentle breaths filled the air between them. Then Minho opened his eyes again, his voice trembling. I've been writing letters I never sent. Pages and pages. I didn't know how to speak to you without breaking you more. Letters. He nodded. They're not apologies. Just memories. Regrets. Things I noticed too late. She stood and disappeared into the bedroom for a moment. When she returned, she held the photo he had sent weeks ago, the one from their old apartment. She handed it to him. I went back too, she said. Last week. I stood in front of that broken elevator and remembered the day we carried in the bookshelf. I was 8 weeks pregnant and you didn't let me lift a thing. He smiled sadly. I was terrified even then, but I felt proud, like we were building something that would last forever. Eunji nodded, her voice soft. That version of us, it was real and beautiful, but we lost it. She sat back down, her tone steady. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all, that we can still love a version of someone who doesn't exist anymore. He reached slowly across the table, not touching her, just resting his hand near hers. Maybe we start again, he whispered, not as husband and wife, just people who once loved each other enough to raise something beautiful. She stared at his hand for a long time, then looked at Hae-won, then back at him, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, she moved her pinky, letting it brush gently against his. Not a promise. Not forgiveness. 3. She glanced toward the kitchen. He was still here. Minho had fallen asleep on the living room floor, curled near the edge of the playmat. One hand resting beside the photo album he must have found on the shelf. The pages had been left open to the picture of their wedding day. A blurry, impromptu photo of them laughing, rice in her hair, her cheeks glowing with a joy she hadn't seen on her face in years. She rose and walked to the crib, lifting Hae-won gently into her arms. Let's not wake him, she whispered to her daughter. Not yet, but her voice must have stirred him. Minho blinked up from the floor, squinting at the soft light and then at her, standing there in the early morning glow with their child in her arms. Sorry, he said, his voice husky. I didn't mean to fall asleep. It's okay. She adjusted the baby's blanket. You didn't snore. He laughed softly, sitting up. Small victories. She turned, watching him carefully. You stayed. I didn't plan to. I know. They stood in silence, the morning stretching between them. Then he spoke again, quieter this time. I dreamed of her last night. Eunji looked down at Hae-won. She was older, Minho continued. Maybe 4 or 5. We were at the zoo. She was holding my hand and pulling me toward the elephants. His voice caught. She looked at me like I was her whole world. Eunji inhaled sharply. She'll look at you like that for real. Someday. He nodded, eyes glistening. If I earn it. She crossed the room and sat on the couch, placing Hae-won between them. The baby cooed softly, her fingers stretching as if reaching for the morning light. Do you still think about that night? Eunji asked suddenly. He looked at her, unsure. Which night? The restaurant. His entire body shifted. A slow exhale. Every day. She nodded slowly. I do too, she said. But not the way you think. Not with rage. Or grief. I remember it because that was the night I realized I didn't know you anymore. He swallowed, eyes lowering. I didn't know myself either. You looked happy with her. I wasn't. You smiled. I forced it. You held her hand. I hated myself for it. The words hung in the air like fog. I've played that moment in my head 1,000 times, she said, wondering if I could have said something different, done something different, if maybe I had walked out sooner. No, he said firmly. Don't do that. Please. That moment. It was on me. All of it. You were nothing but grace. And he shook his head, breath shaking. I was a coward chasing emptiness and calling it freedom. Tears gathered in her eyes. I hated you that night, she whispered, and I hated myself for still loving you. He reached forward slowly, not touching her, just resting his hand near hers again. I know. Her shoulders trembled. I walked into that restaurant and saw you feeding another woman with the same hands that once held my pain. I thought I would shatter. I shattered too, he said, his voice barely a breath. But I hid it. I buried it. And I lost you for it. The baby stirred between them, her lips puckering in her sleep. The moment softened, grounded by her presence. Eunji looked down at Hae-won, then back at Min-ho. Do you still love me? She asked suddenly, her voice low but unwavering. He looked stunned. Yes, he said without hesitation. But not the way I used to. Not with assumptions. Not with arrogance. I love you with reverence now. I love you knowing I may never get to show it. But I carry it. Every moment. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I don't know what to do with that, she said, because part of me still loves you too. But I don't trust that part. You don't have to, he said. Just let it be. Let it exist. Even if it never turns into anything else. She looked at him. Broken. Honest. Changed. And she saw in herself the woman who had grown a spine out of pain and a heart out of ruins. I don't want to go back, she whispered. Neither do I. I want something new. Something honest. Even if it's small. Even if it's